inline interactive maps. So there is a very the standard, I guess, way to create interactive maps in your browser. I would say it's a very popular library is Leaflet.js, but this is a JavaScript library. It's used in lots of places. OpenStreetMap uses it. Many different public, various very respectable publications use it, and it's a very convenient library to be able to embed maps and web pages. We actually don't need to know all that much about it, but to know that this is what we are using to actually create the maps. But the thing is that this library is in JavaScript, right? Because it's creating a map that runs in the web browser. But we write our notebooks in Python, right? So that's where this Folium library enters the picture. So Folium is a library that wraps the Leaflet.js library and allows us to call it or from Python. So it allows us to basically use the features of Leaflet.js in a Python environment. And Folium is one library that does this. There are others. IPyLeaflet, IPy Leaflet, all run together, is another library that's actually very good. Both of these are, I would say, both of these libraries are still under development, but that doesn't mean they don't work. They actually work quite well. The full features of Leaflet are not necessarily all there, but there's still a lot we can do with it just with Folium. So in both of these, I have listed their kind of homepage for the Leaflet library and for the Folium library. And Folium's, in their own words, they say Folium makes it easy to visualize data that's been manipulated in Python on an interactive map. And so this is because we're in a Python environment, this is what we want to use to make it easy to visualize the data we're getting from the data cube on an interactive map in our Jupyter notebooks. So there's lots you can do with Folium, and so we're only going to kind of dip our toe in. And the three things that I kind of want to look at are changing the base map, so making sure that you have that the background map, the default map that pops up, kind of makes sense and looks the way you want it. The next thing is then adding data that we've imported from the data cube onto that map, and then finally some common plugins that are just kind of quality of life features that make using the interactive map a little easier. So let's go ahead. I'm actually going to change my new share. I need to find the window that it's in. Screen. Let's see. Where did it go? There it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and restart and clear all outputs. Okay, so this is a little example notebook that I put together to look at interactive maps. We start off by doing the standard import. Some very useful imports here, importing the data cube. We're importing Folium and Folium plugins, and we'll use those here in a second. GeoPandas, because I actually don't use this in this notebook, but you can actually also overlay vector data onto these things, so I might expand this in the future. In order to give us full control over the adding of data, we're going to actually create images using Matplotlib here in a second. NumPy is useful for manipulating arrays. pandas is good for manipulating tabular data, and xarray is the data type. The data cube is going to return us xarray, an xarray when we load data. So first we do kind of the standard. We connect to the data cube. I'm choosing a location here as a. I've created it as like a simple dictionary. So we have a longitude, a latitude, and an area, which is going to be the how far off from that particular point, the area around that particular point that I want to gather. I have a small function here that creates the kind of extent for the box that I want to import. So when we run create extent on this location, right, I should get back a small dictionary with the latitude range from 11.8 that to 11.9. So it just adds and subtracts there. And you may have also seen this a lot, that we from the DE Africa plotting script will use display map. And display map is actually using Folium. So if I recall correctly. And so they were drawing this nice box to show us the area we're about to load. And this interactive map is actually a Folium map. I mean, we can zoom all the way out, and in fact, I find I find the zooming behavior a little bit annoying, and we'll address that here in a second. But yeah, this is something you can create using Folium, but it's just kind of wrapped up in this script for you. So now I'm going to load some data, and today I'm just going to use dc.load, datacube.load in order to load it. An important thing to note is to use this coordinate reference system, 3857. This is like a very important point, because this is the coordinate reference system that most online tiled maps use. So Google Maps, OpenStreetMaps, Esri, all the different tile providers are probably using that CRS. So it's good to specify your to have your data given to you in that CRS if you're going to add it to an interactive map. So let's load some data. This will take a second. All right. So in fact, let me try something real quick. Let me share my whole screen here. Can is this too big, Ken? Are you able to read this, or?
I think the other one is a very small font, like font 2.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me see if I can view single document. I should be able to blow this up some.
Yeah,
that's
much
more
better.
legible.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So okay. So I've loaded some data here. I was kind of messing with the thing, but here's our xarray, right? We have 6 different time slices. They're 372 by 380. And so we now have our data to use, right? And this is still just straightforward data cube stuff. So I'm choosing the first time slice here, and actually I think that's a spare thing, and I can plot that time slice. So I'm choosing the SWIR band, so the shortwave infrared, and I can look at that. This should be pretty familiar. But now let's start looking at Folium. Let's say I wanted to take this information here, and I wanted to add it to a map. So let's start by looking at how to format the Folium map. So there's 2 main ways to do this. You can specify default tiles when you load, or you can provide a URL to a map tile server. So And there's an example of this map tile server in the presentation here in this little green box of how to do this. So let's first start by, hopefully I'm not losing it, but let's first start by adding a Folium map. And the way you do this is you call the use the Folium library, right? And use the .map method. And here I'm giving it a location. And remember this location is just the longitude and latitude here, right? So I'm just accessing those values from the dictionary and passing it the latitude and the longitude, right, in each of these locations. And then I've stored it in this variable m, but in order to show it, I just call m. So and it gives me a map of the location I want to see. So next step is that this might not be, this seems a little far, like zoomed out a little far, and maybe I want to start at a closer zoom level, maybe something like that. And so I can specify a zoom level by just to start at, for zoom start equals 12, and that will give me something very similar to the above, right? That I'm starting at a closer zoom level that I want. And notice I'm overriding m here. I'm overriding the variable. So this is actually a new map object when I'm calling map, but I'm going to continue to refer to m. Is this thing, I'm storing this map here in the variable m, right? So whenever I want to add something to it, I need to say like add to the map m, okay? And this could be anything. I could have named this, you know, my weir map or something like that. And when I do that, then I can just, when I want to display it, I can just say my weir map or something like that. So all right, so let's talk about the changing the base map, getting the style the way you want it. So one way is to specify this default tiles. And so there's some, these are just a few of the like default tiles that are available, and you can experiment and look up. There's a whole this website I've linked to here has a whole gallery of like default providers. I don't think it's been updated in a while because some of them don't work anymore. But what's really cool is that it's got a big full screen map, and then over here on the right, you can just like choose different default styles that you may want, and it's got a, and this is for JavaScript, but the URL that they provide up here, which is very, very tiny, will work in Folium to get this type of map. So this is like kind of a little handy resource that if you want a specific map looking a specific way. So let's go ahead and do that. And notice now our map looks a little different. It looks a little bit more like a drawing, like cartographic, and that's because we're using this Stamen terrain default. All right. So, but let's say I want to use something from somewhere else, right? For instance, something from this provider demo. If I know there's a map tile provider, and you can choose from any of these, right? I can specify that as a URL when I first start here. And I can actually just put the URL in the quotes here instead of a default string. But maybe I want to add it as an extra layer, so I can actually have multiple of these map tiles going at once. And this is done by adding a raster layer, but a specific type of raster layer, a WMS, a web map service tile layer. And here I'm just specifying an ArcGIS map tile layer, and it's going to be Esri World Imagery. And to make sure I've attributed it properly, I followed their attribution guidelines and added it here. And so that'll end up looking something like this. So it's much more like actual satellite imagery, and it's nice and high quality. So now to the good stuff. So we've kind of set up the map the way we want it to look, right? Now we would like to add our data. So let's talk about adding our data. So again, make sure you're using this coordinate reference system. And although so Folium will accept a raw array. If you want to give it a raw array, it'll try to interpret it as an image and put it on your map. But I find it's much easier to have control over what it's displaying and what it looks like if we first plot our data as an image using matplotlib, save that to a file, and then we can load that file into our map as a raster layer. Another reason to save the file is that, you know, our notebooks are kind of temporary, right? Like a lot of times we have to rerun them in order to reload all the data. But if I save the data the way I want it to look to a file, when I want to reload the map, or if I want to keep the map interactive, it's still just referring back to the static file. And so I don't have to go fetch any new data and reload it into the variable, if that makes sense. So if there's any questions, free to type in chat or interrupt me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save a file called SWIR PNG. And actually, let me delete this real quick. So I'm going to save that earlier plot, the SWIR, the shortwave infrared thing, as a plot to a file. I'm going to turn off the axes because I don't want those actually displaying on the map. And I'm just going to use the msave method in matplotlib to save it to a file. So the f name is the file name, and I've just specified that as file name. The array is I'm pulling just the raw values out of the X array. That's what this does. So I'm taking my capture that I created earlier up here, right? Remember, our capture is the first time slice. The first time slice here. I don't know if y'all saw this. And I'm pulling out the values, right? And I just want the array of values. So that's a 1, right? So and then here I'm using NumPy to kind of throw out the lowest and the highest values to kind of make sure that I am getting the full color map over all of my values in case there's like accidentally a very, very high value or like a very, very low value that doesn't make any sense. So I'm throwing out the outliers by setting the vmin and vmax to that. So I'm going to run this, and that has created this PNG here, right? You turn off single document. This has created this image. So how do I add this image to the map? So I need to use the same raster layers, this folium.raster layers, and here I'm going to specify an image overlay, right? And I'm going to tell Folium that the image is just this file, right? SWIR.png that I defined up here. And then from the bounds, I need to specify the upper left, right, and the bottom right. So it wants the upper left and bottom right, and it'll draw a box, and it'll put the image in that upper left and bottom right. And this is remember DS area is just the dictionary I created when I called create extent on my location. So it's this dictionary right here. So I'm choosing the first value and the first value of each, and I'm saying that's my upper left, and I'm choosing the second value of each and saying that's my bottom right. And then finally, I'm going to say add this to my map, and then after that, I'm going to say I'm going to display my map. So let's do that. And here we can see that my image is now on the interactive map. I can zoom in. It's not nearly as high resolution as the satellite imagery, but it's now actually I can get kind of a better understanding of that. But this is a little bit annoying. I can't see what's underneath it, right? And so there's a couple of ways to do that. one way is to add a few features. So there's 3 features we're going to add to this. Is we're going to add a scroll lock that you can click to keep it keep scrolling from adjusting the zoom. We're going to add a way to turn on and off layers, and we're going to add a mini map. So so from the Folium plugins, there's something called a scroll zoom toggler, right? And I can just add that to my map. Also from the Folium plugins, I can add a full screen button, and I'm going to add that to the top right. Actually, you can specify a position of all of these, but let's just say for simplicity, I'm not going to add that to the top right, but I'm just going to add it to my map. And then finally, I want to add a little layer control toggle, and I'm also going to add that to my map. So now let's look at the map. And so now these new controls from this previous thing have appeared. So I have my full screen button now. I have some layer control, so I can turn off the Esri image, and I can now display my Sphere image, and it's labeled as such right here. And then I have notice I'm able to scroll up and down over this, but when I hit this one, when I start scrolling, right, it kind of annoyingly zooms out, right? So this bottom left button allows me to toggle on and off the zoom scrolling behavior. So that's just a little quality of life thing to make it a little bit easier to use in your notebook. And I think with that, we can go into any of the details. Like for instance, when I added the data to here, I added show equals false, which means that the default is that this does not actually show. And then we can also add things like opacity and things. And so I'm happy to answer questions about that kind of thing. But that is that's my presentation. So hopefully that was informative.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think with the silence, it means everything was so well received. And also it's a very new thing for most of the users. So my request will be if you could share the PDF of the same and the small IP Python file. You can just look through it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, yes, thank you so much, Brian. Any question for Brian, ladies and gentlemen? I think silence means everyone was so happy.
Let's hope.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and also maybe could we have any feedback or anyone else who wants to present some of their work in this particular case? Thank you so much, Brian.
No problem.
So we had some people who joined us in the middle of the meeting. Welcome very much, David Ongo, RC Madi. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Dr. Hello, everyone. Sorry, we are also conducting some training here, so I've been involved in it. Some of the components that we're also showcasing is actually this. It's an open source, the open source tools for geoinformation sciences as well as data. We are having member states. We are having, out of the 20, we have 12 countries present with 2 participants from each of the countries. So we have around 24 participants. And tomorrow we are having a whole day taking them through aspects related to DEA. So thank you for sharing this. I hope the script is also inside it's updated, the new app. It's inside the notebooks within the platform. Hopefully we can also showcase this one as well. Thank you.
No problem. It's not immediately available. The hope is to add these examples as we go along, maybe sometime in the future. But I will share a PDF, and I'm happy to share the actual notebook with anybody who would like it. But I'll share a PDF just for portability of the actual cells, and all the code should run on the sandbox.
Well, I'll be happy to have a look at it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, David, and congratulations on the great job on bringing 12 countries. It's a big job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Amadou Sal Boju, how are you today, sir?
Hello, Ken. Thank you, Brian, for your useful presentation.
Kelabogi, how are you today, madam?
Hello, yes, I'm fine. I was just listening. I came in through, but I was following what Brian is saying. Hopefully I can play with it later on. Thank you.
This can be very nice for your area in Okavango, showing the various possibilities.
Oh, I saw that. It looks like it's a delta area that he's working on, a real delta, because Okavango Delta is not a real delta.
Yeah, this was Guinea-Bissau in Guinea, La Guinea.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Thank you. Africa is really blessed with these landscapes. We also have Madam Fatou from IPA. How are you, Madam? Would you, Fatou? She has problem with the microphone. We also joined by Sule Sogoba. How are you, sir? Madam? I'm also joined by my colleague Edward Bowman. Are you there, Edward? Any update for us, sir? We are also joined by Stella Mutai. Any update for us, Stella, this week?
Yeah. My biggest challenge now, like what I've been working on a lot, is data, getting field data sites, especially for places that were insect infested. And then probably another thing that maybe I'd asked for your insights is like apart from using vegetation index, in the probability of using factors like temperature, and like if I compare maybe South Africa and I compare it with maybe Ghana, the temperatures are a bit different. But one of the things that we also want to understand is how do we tell like the period before insect infestation? We can tell easily when an area has been highly infected by insects, but how can we tell the period before, so that for the people who depend a lot on timber, they can either cut the trees that have similar characteristics as the ones that have been infected by insects earlier, so that they don't go on a loss like that? And how can remote sensing be very, very helpful in that aspect? Yeah.
So I think I don't know who. I'm assuming this was directed at me. I would say that one is this kind of comes down to the insect infestation that you're looking at, right? Is that are there basically the characteristics of the insects themselves? Like, is there some? I think your question was what sort of leading indicators could be remotely sensed
Exactly.
to like predict? Is that it comes down to the insects themselves. So if for instance, the insects usually swarm after a heavy rainfall or during a specific temperature or something like that, I think you can load up a bunch of data and then try to look for like a correlation, some sort of leading factors that then precede an infestation. But I think it will be easier to either consult a domain expert on the insects or do some sort of research about these are the conditions that lead to large swarms, infestation, or potentially weaken the trees, right? So maybe long periods of drought or something like that. And then that could be identified either through external data sources. So for the rainfall or drought, right? You could bring in any common weather data, right, as time series data into your notebook. or there are remote sensing measurements such that you could look at maybe soil moisture or something of that nature. I know you're looking at very like forested areas, so things like soil moisture and stuff. If there's a heavy canopy, right, you may not be able to get the actual ground moisture. That usually works better on exposed soil, but that would be the kind of lines of thinking I would be going down.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Maybe I'll do a presentation in the next 2 weeks when I have the data good enough. Then probably it can be easier for more guidance in it.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in seeing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stella. At least now you have a lot of homework. We call them House of Gabi. A lot of work for you to do. Great work. We're also joined by any other reactions to these topics. Edward, are you able to access your audio?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, so hello everyone. Great presentation, Brian. I know having these tools available in the DA platform also help people to be able to utilize, especially when it comes to the visualization. So that's a great presentation. And nice to meet all of you once again this week also.
Thank you very much, Edward. Thank you so much. Any other reactions before we close the session early so that we can go do some work? Eileen Magero, have been able to access the training materials?
Well, yes, I have been able to access, and I'm still learning.
Will this be
That's
useful
fine.
for your
That's
assignments in water resources?
Yes, in water resources.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe at the end of the course, I'll see what to do. Like I'll try and apply. Yeah.
Will you be having a study area in mind at the moment?
Not really. Maybe I'll give it some thought. Yeah, because I'm still grasping the concepts. Yeah, because I'm trying to see how I can apply it to sustainability, like in assessing the extent to which it has been achieved and what you can do from the data.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Eileen. Thank you so much. We're also joined by Lilian Com from Cameroon. Are you able to access your audio? Madam Lilian? Bonjour. Okay, I think there's a problem with the audio. We've also been joined by Maxine. Where are you calling us from? Maxine.
Yeah, I'm here from Madagascar.
Yes, have you been able to look at the materials for the Africa?
I don't listen you, so excuse me.
Tu travailles avec Digital Art Afrique.
No, I'm from the National Center of Research with the Community of Open Data of Madagascar here.
With Faneva.
Yeah, Faneva. I know Faneva. She is with us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Bienvenue, Messi.
Yes, thank you so much. Welcome to.
You have access to the training materials, the links, everything?
Yeah, I have access.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Any other reactions? So Brian, you'll send your PDF, be able to share to the guys, and then maybe this on the note. So I wish to thank you everybody, and I think we should think about the topic for next week. Maybe Brian, something more close to home, something on the water wolves, something we can really relate to the issues we have.
Okay. Is there? I'm happy to take requests from anybody. My email's in the presentation. So if you have a particular presentation topic you're interested in, or I'm open to suggestions now. But also, if you just have a question about any of the presentations or anything like that, and indeed, if you have a question about your current use case like Stella had or anything like that, like this is a good opportunity where everybody can kind of discuss and help each other and give each other feedback. So yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. Looking forward to seeing you next week, and God bless you. Bye-bye.